Hello, and thanks for tuning in. As always, this is Reverend JR, and today I thought we'd talk for a few minutes about the flat Earth. So I've been hearing a lot about the flat Earth, and people want to try to convince me of it, and I don't quite get it. There's some arguments I'd like to have clarified before I can really believe in something like that. The first thing would be the idea that, the Earth isn't moving, otherwise you'd be able to feel it. This is almost universal across all the different flat Earth theories that exist. So what I want to know is, ocean currents and tectonic plates, how do they work? We've already said, the Earth isn't moving if you can't feel it, so the earthquakes clearly can't be caused by things like tectonic plates, or you would feel them moving under you all the time. And since there's no real heat from the center of the Earth, you're not going to be heating the ocean water and that sort of thing. You're also not going to be getting consistent, bright enough sun to move the ocean currents around. Because, you kind of need the spin of the Earth for that. You need the tectonic plates to do that, things like tsunamis. I wonder, whenever they get one of these unified flat Earth theories figured out, how thick will the Earth be? And if it's not round, why can't we drill further into it and find out what's underneath the Earth? I mean, clearly it can't just be floating, and whatever the Earth is on, the substrate has to be on something. But let's go back to the sun and the ocean currents a little bit, because that's another weird one. A lot of the flat earthers, they'll have, the flat Earth, and the North Pole's at the center, and it's frozen, and the South Pole is somehow the entire outside, and it's frozen. Okay. So, when the sun goes around that circle, like here, how far away is it that for some reason the center can freeze, but for some reason the ocean where the sun goes around in a circle doesn't, even though none of the sun's energy when it's over here is getting to the other side of that Earth? Why wouldn't the nighttime portion be constantly frozen, especially since the outside is, you see? I mean, apart from the fact that, there's permafrost on completely around the outside, let's say the South, Antarctica, whatever. And there's ice, the North Pole, the Arctic region. How do you get around the fact that the other part of the world isn't just permanently frozen whenever the sun's not on it? How close must the sun be, but also how far away must it be, that the oceans stay thawed, but not enough to freeze the areas the sun isn't touching at night, even though the sun's got less energy at that point than our current sun? Another good question would be, how big is the sun supposed to be? I mean, we could figure it out with geometry and say it's so big and everything. We also know that the sun goes over the North Pole part of the year and keeps it in constant sunlight, but somehow this sun doesn't melt it over the flat Earth. But yeah, and the other thing I thought of, speaking still to the ocean and the ice and the currents and everything, how is it that if the Earth is flat, it's not a giant meniscus? Meniscus, if you don't know, is when the water kind of clings to one side, hits its low point in the middle, and comes up the other. You can see it in a glass, or more pronounced in a straw. But wouldn't that mean that, the North Pole, the center, is actually quite a bit lower than the outsides? If everything's going to be level, wouldn't the Earth fundamentally have to be like a dish? And how, then, could the water, since, you'd be melting it around that center, why would it not melt the middle, since the middle would be like free-floating, essentially? I don't know, these are some of the things you need to explain if you want to explain the flat Earth as a viable model at all. Not to mention the stars. Where do the stars come in? What is the dome made of? You know, if the sun is on it, that prevents us from going to space and holds the atmosphere in or something. Speaking of which, if the Earth really is flat and there's a giant ice wall that goes around it, where's all the extra atmosphere that would have to exist uniformly throughout space? I mean, the sun would not be enough energy if it were significantly tinier to, create enough wind, especially without the ocean currents and everything, on its own. And if it were a lot closer, the wind wouldn't work that way either. But even beyond that, why don't the clouds always move away from the center, where the North Pole is? Why do the clouds never go off past Antarctica, but rather they seem to go around it in a big circle? Even overhead, because, the world spins as it's round. And, the clouds kind of follow that same rotational pattern that the sun kicks up. But again, if you're constantly heating this small area, why isn't some of that atmosphere switching in and out? Why doesn't the cold air that isn't being warmed by anything for all of eternity way out into nothing, why doesn't it work like a giant heat sink and all the clouds don't just roll off towards, Antarctica? In fact, why would there be any wind going anywhere like that? Why wouldn't there be a giant tornado at the North Pole? I mean, honestly, these are some of the questions you would have to answer if you want me to believe in your flat Earth. I don't think it's going to happen. The flat Earth doesn't even have one solid unified theory to itself right now. It has many that are fragmented and cannot explain everything that goes on. Like, if the Earth is flat, why don't the birds occasionally fly out of it? If the Earth is flat, why can't we go to the ice wall and just continue walking forever? Again, there must be an atmosphere out there if there's one here, right? But yeah, the flat Earth doesn't make any sense. I just thought I'd throw a few ideas down here as they popped into my head. If you enjoyed that, click the thumbs up. Talk about it down in the comments. Try to convince me the Earth is flat. I don't think you can do it. But tell me specifically which model, how the atmosphere works. I mean, if the Earth is flat, you gotta remember, you're not gonna get lensatic curving. The light rays will pretty much go straight, just like they do if you're underwater, or anywhere that the air doesn't curve. Remember, the only reason the horizon you get that cheating effect is because the atmosphere curves around the Earth, and the density changes as it goes around. If the density is uniform across the flat, then those light waves just kind of go straight, and you should be able to hit one side of the ocean from the other, let's say, New Jersey to England, with a laser pointer, by pointing it at the right direction, based on the refraction. Again, if the Earth doesn't curve like a lens. Anyway, that's going to be it for today. That was just one last thought I thought I'd throw in. And as always, this has been Reverend JR, signing off.